You don't notice time slipping until it's already gone. Not minutes, not hours. Whole years. Vanished like ash scattered in warp winds. I was a man once. A real man. I remember that part. Or I think I do. My name, my oath, the first rites I gave to the architect of fate. These might be true memories or echoes he placed in me like riddles in a maze. But something's wrong now. The sigils on my skin don't match the ones I remember carving. My knife is older than my hands. The moons of this world are out of order, and my brothers speak to me in dialects I taught them, though I have no memory of ever speaking them aloud. They call me Father. They call me Herald. Some even call me It. I answer to all. There are too many doors in my sleep now. Some open, some scream. Some whisper the name I gave up to earn a new one. And beyond them? Moments I cannot account for. Entire battles I don't remember fighting. Wounds I don't remember healing. A child once that may have been mine, or may have been me. When you offer yourself to Tzeentch, you do not sell your soul. You lend it. And the rent always comes due. If you're hearing this transmission, maybe you've already lost time too. Maybe you've noticed the gaps, the cracks in your reflection. If so, stay. Listen, like, subscribe, and archive what you can, because memory is fragile in his domain. And what I'm about to tell you is already trying to erase itself. I used to think the sky was blue. That was before the ash storms, before the clouds turned to iron, before the warp began whispering in colors that have no name. On Cellin 4, we had no saints, no litanies beyond the ones that kept the mining servitors running and the reactor pits humming. What we had was routine. Shift bells, ration tokens, and recitations from the Book of Industrial Devotions. We called it faith, but it was function. It kept us upright. It kept us from looking up. I worked the lathe lines 12 levels down, 3 shifts from surface. Sometimes I think that's where it all began. Beneath the pressure, beneath the stone where things shouldn't breathe, the heat wasn't right anymore. The promethium pumps ticked irregularly. Some of the tech priests began placing incense bowls in the ducts and whispering to the walls before they turned on the machinery. They called it preventative maintenance. But we knew. Something old was stretching under the floor. Something dreaming. We'd heard of chaos, of course. We'd seen the pics. Horned monstrosities, cults of blood and fire, entire sectors purged. We mocked them. We thought heresy meant madness, something visible, something violent. But what came for us wasn't loud. It was subtle, a shift in tone, a flicker in the auspex that returned no anomaly, a shift bell that rang 3 seconds too early, just enough to unsettle you, just enough to make you doubt the machine. That's where he crept in. We never named him. Names give shape, and what we followed had too many. First he came in dreams, an ocean with no surface, a library made of skin, a mouth that spoke in reverse. I dismissed it. Too many hours without rest. But the dreams didn't stop. Worse, they began sinking. I'd come into shift and hear the men muttering the same fragments I'd dreamt the night before. He writes us backward. We are already printed. Time folds like parchment. Always different voices, always the same phrases. It wasn't until one of the servitors killed itself that I started listening. You don't understand. Servitors don't want. Their flesh nailed to code, stripped of desire. They execute. They endure. But this one, Unit 74 Kappa, ripped its arms off mid-operation. Tore through its own logic engine with claws meant for precision work. I still remember the wet clang when it collapsed. Still remember the oil and the blood burning on the forge floor. I saw something in its one remaining eye right before it failed. Fear. Or the echo of it. The overseers issued cleansing rites. We were told it was a data glitch. They burned the remains with hymn chant and welders. But I couldn't forget it. That moment. That choice. And neither could Laura. She was my friend once, or maybe more. We never spoke of it, not on Sealand 4th. There's no place for tenderness on a Forge world. But we'd watch each other's backs, sink our off hours, sit in silence while the others sang work hymns just to feel less alone. One night after the servitor's death, she found me on the upper gantry. The sky had already started losing color by then, shifting between slate and bruise, refusing to settle. She didn't speak for a long time, just handed me something, a strip of parchment, a data slate fragment, burnt around the edges but intact in the middle. It held no code, no command, just a question. What is the first thing you forgot? I laughed. I thought it was a joke, a cult test maybe. But she didn't smile. She asked it again, voice low like it might break something. And for the life of me, I couldn't answer. I couldn't even remember what my father looked like. I don't know when that memory vanished. I just knew it was gone. The next night, there were 6 of us. Then 13. Laura had the book now. Not the one she gave me, but another. Bound in blue flesh. It pulsed when she held it. I tried to ask where she found it, but she just whispered, "It found me." She didn't sound afraid. She sounded reverent. We read from it, not aloud. Reading aloud made the walls weep, but in our minds we let it in. The pages didn't stay still. They reformed, tailored themselves to the reader. I saw memories I hadn't lived, words I didn't know I knew. I began to understand. Not just the symbols, the pattern, the movement, the rhythm of events curling back on themselves, tying consequence to origin in a loop of divine logic. That was the first time I heard the phrase, the architect of fate. Not from the book, from myself. I whispered it, I tasted it, and I felt it whisper back. By the end of the cycle, the sky was gone. Not cloudy, gone. We looked up and there was no dome, no firmament. Just a flat, churning sheet of sigils flickering like flames made of thought. The manufacturum bells stopped ringing, or maybe we stopped hearing them. Our Vox units burst, the pick displays bled light. And in the silence we knew. The Imperium had left us, or we had left it. A day later, the Adeptus Mechanicus sent an envoy. Just one. She came in crimson robes, metal jaw twitching, a servo skull hovering behind her, etched with the warning glyphs of scrap code contamination. She stood among us, looked at the book, then at Laura, then at me, and said one word. Approved. That was the last day I saw the world as it had been. That was the day the sky forgot its color. That was the day we chose. There was no ceremony when Laura gave me the book, no chants, no bloodletting, no oaths murmured over flame, just a gesture, quiet, reverent, as if she were passing me something sacred and fragile. I took it with both hands, not because I feared damaging it, but because something in my bones told me I already had. It was heavier than it looked. The cover flexed, but not like parchment or hide. It pulsed, like something sleeping inside. There were no visible letters on its skin, no spine markings, no sigils I could recognize, not even the 8-pointed star that the ecclesiarchy swears to find behind every heresy. Just a shifting texture that danced in my peripheral vision, like reflections rippling across Mercury. When I blinked, I saw diagrams I didn't understand. When I blinked again, they were gone. The first time I opened it, the room felt colder. Not the air, the light. The lumen globes dimmed, not as if power had faltered, but as if illumination had been forgotten. The pages were blank at first, empty, waiting. I felt foolish, lied to, tricked. But Laura just smiled and told me to sleep with it near. "It remembers better than you do," she said. "You'll see." That night the dreams returned, but sharper. Not the vague imagery of before. This time I was walking corridors I recognized but had never seen. A tunnel of screaming pipes, a cathedral with no door, a vault filled with clocks that ticked backwards. I was wearing robes I didn't own, my skin painted with words I could not speak. In the dream, I opened the book again, and it knew me. Knew my name before I remembered it. Knew my sins before I committed them. I woke up gasping. The book was open beside me, and a page had written itself. I didn't understand the symbols. Not yet. They moved when I looked at them, swirling into new patterns, never repeating like ink poured into water. But the shape of the paragraph was familiar. A message, addressed to me. It said, "You have taken the first step. What comes next has already happened." After that, the changes came fast. I stopped marking days, we all did. The sky was unreadable now, and the shift bells never restarted. Food still appeared, ration bins still filled somehow. But none of us remembered retrieving them. The manufactorum continued to hum, its engines devouring ore and refining alloys, but no shipments were being loaded. The forge kept breathing, but there were no orders, no logistics, no contact with the outer system. As if the Imperium had closed its eyes. Every morning I woke up to a new page, sometimes two. On days I couldn't find the book, I'd discover it somewhere else, already open, waiting. On my bunk, on the gantry rail. Once sealed inside a servitor's chest cavity. Always with a new message, always in the same structure. A moment I had not yet lived, a thought I would later think, a consequence I had not yet caused. At first, I tried resisting, tried denying its accuracy. The entries were vague, phrases like, "The glass shatters when the liar speaks," or "You will bleed from the mouth that lies." But when Laura accused Bexon of hiding something from the cult, and he protested his innocence, a second later the gantry beneath him collapsed and he fell, biting through his own tongue as he hit the floor. I stopped questioning. The book was not predicting events. It was remembering them before I lived them. That's when I understood. It wasn't a text. It was a reflection. And like all reflections, it could only show what was already there. Even if I hadn't seen it yet, others began to follow. The cult grew, not from recruitment. We didn't preach, didn't proselytize, but people began forgetting. Forgetting where they were born. Forgetting what day it was. Forgetting their own reflections. And when they were ready, when that forgetting hollowed them out just enough, they'd come to us. And the book would write them too. It started keeping entries for them, entire chapters of memory cross-referenced between multiple lives. One worker began dreaming in Laura's voice. Another swore she remembered dying, even though she was still alive. We called these overlaps. At first they were rare, then they became constant, then intentional. I remember the night I found an entry in the book signed in my hand, describing an event I hadn't just not lived. I couldn't live. It was a suicide. Mine. The words were cold, matter of fact. He slices open his wrists with a cog blade and bleeds into the circuit of the machine spirit, whispering the word regret, even though he doesn't know what it means. I had no intention of dying. But the description, it sounded right, like something I would do if I had the chance. That terrified me more than anything. From that moment forward, I stopped thinking of the book as a record. It was a choice. It offered you yourself, just in a different order. If you liked what it showed, you leaned in. If you feared it, you leaned further. Laura, by then, had stopped speaking entirely. She no longer needed words. The book wrote her actions hours before she made them, and she obeyed. Or did the book remember her obedience? There were whispers she no longer slept, that she had passed beyond dream and into pattern. I watched her stand for hours before a sealed door deep in the forge core, an entrance that hadn't been used in decades. The book wrote that she would enter it. The next morning, the door was open. The place behind it was something else. I wish I could say what we found. I wish I could describe it in terms you'd understand. It was not architecture. It was not a tunnel or a chamber or a temple. It was possibility. A space shaped by narrative gravity, where every object was a metaphor and every wall a choice not yet made. We called it the atrium. And in its center, surrounded by floating glyphs and hollowed-out timepieces, was the book's second form. It looked just like the first, until you blinked. Then it looked like you. Then it asked questions. The atrium didn't echo. It remembered. And the deeper we went, the more we began to feel stretched. Some said we were being prepared. Others said we were being copied. One day, a new entry appeared in the book. It said, "Do not trust the man who calls himself me." I don't know how many versions of myself exist. I don't know if the man writing this now is the one who found the atrium or the one the atrium replaced. I only know that the pages keep turning, and I'm starting to forget what chapter I'm on. It began with a sound, faint at first, like the echo of a hymn carried through miles of broken conduit. It wasn't the Vox. The Vox had long since died. This was different. A melody that trembled against the edges of reason, a song that no one remembered learning but somehow everyone knew the words to. We had stopped counting time by then, so I cannot tell you how long it had been since the atrium opened. Maybe weeks, maybe centuries. All I know is that the sky had begun weeping light. And then she came. She arrived at shift change. Not that we worked anymore, not truly. The manufactorum still pulsed, but without rhythm. Fires burned without consuming. Furnaces howled like beasts in pain. And through that endless mechanical grief she stepped, a figure in white armor that shimmered like frost on metal. Her gait was steady, unhurried. Around her the air shimmered like the edge of a dream refusing to end. Some dropped to their knees the moment they saw her. Others screamed. I just froze, because I knew that face. It was Laura's. Not exactly, but close enough that something in me broke trying to reconcile the two. Her eyes glowed the way I remembered when she spoke of the architect's patterns. Her mouth moved with the same quiet certainty. But her voice carried weight that Laura's never did. It wasn't human. It was liturgical, layered, like 10,000 echoes speaking through her. Children of the pattern, she said, your time is unbound. Return to the source and be forgiven. I hadn't heard that word in years. None of us had. Forgiveness had been burned out of the lexicon of Celine IV the day the sky vanished. But hearing it from her made something in my chest ache. A hunger I thought I'd smothered. Some fell forward, sobbing. Others reached toward her as if drawn by instinct. She raised a hand and they stilled. Her gauntlet shimmered with light. Not fire, not warp, something purer. Something that hurt to see. She touched the first of them. A man named Calrin. His body convulsed, light pouring from his mouth, his eyes, his wounds. For a moment he looked beautiful. Then his skin dissolved into smoke, not burned, undone. Every atom rewritten into a shimmer that joined the halo around her. She turned to us, smiled. He is free. The others rushed to her. I didn't. I remembered the book. I remembered the warning. Do not trust the man who calls himself me. What about a woman who wears the face of someone I loved? I backed away as the others reached her. Each time she touched them, they vanished in a burst of radiance. No screams, no blood. Just light, too bright to name. And with every one she claimed, her armor grew more ornate, more gilded, more divine. Wings began to flicker from her shoulders, woven of refracted memory. She was becoming something vast. Or maybe she had always been that and we were just catching up. When she finally looked at me, I felt my spine lock. There was recognition in her gaze and worse, affection. "You should have come sooner," she said. "You were the first to listen." I shook my head. "Laura?" She tilted hers, curious, like a machine parsing a riddle. That name was a question. I am its answer. And then she smiled again, and the light hit me like revelation. I saw worlds unfolding, burning, rebuilding. I saw the Emperor's throne flicker and the Astronomicon dim. I saw the Eye of Terror pulse like a heart. I saw a god laughing in colors that defied meaning. I saw him. Then it was gone, and I was on my knees, gasping. The saint's hand hovered an inch from my face. "He is watching," she whispered. "He watches through you." I didn't know who she meant. The Emperor? The Architect? Or both? Maybe there was no difference anymore. Behind her, the others had vanished completely. Only their shadows remained. Burned into the floor, twisted in postures of prayer. I looked back to her, ready to ask what she wanted, what this was all for, but she was already fading. Not vanishing like the others, but unfolding. Every edge of her armor peeling into pages of light, drifting upward into the void that had replaced the sky. And in her place, lying where she stood, was a single object. The book. No, a book. The first one had never left me, but this one was colder, heavier. Its surface didn't breathe, it shimmered like frozen glass. I picked it up. My reflection looked back at me and smiled. On its first page, words were already forming, carved by unseen hands. She was never yours to remember. The forge fell silent that night. Even the machines seemed afraid. I tried to sleep, but the dreams wouldn't stop coming. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Laura, or the saint, or both, standing in the atrium, her face flickering between shapes, her hands tracing circles in the air. Sometimes she was whispering, sometimes she was laughing. Always she was looking right at me. I tried to tear the new book apart. It wouldn't burn, it wouldn't bleed, it just waited. On the third day, it wrote something new. "She will return when the clock strikes midnight." That was impossible. There were no clocks anymore. Time had become a rumor, a superstition. But I still found myself listening for it, waiting for some invisible mechanism to chime. And when it did, when a single note echoed through the ruins of the forge, I knew what came next. The saint would return. And this time she would know me by another name. It took 13 of us to carry the mirror into the atrium. Not because it was heavy, it wasn't. It weighed less than expectation. But it resisted movement in ways weight could never explain. Every step we took, the light bent differently. Shadows reversed themselves. Footprints we hadn't made appeared behind us. It was as if the mirror existed slightly ahead of us in time, always predicting the path before we chose it. Or worse, forcing the choice. We'd found it sealed beneath the chapel of cog logic, buried in a chamber that hadn't been accessed since before the planetary census collapsed. Laura, no, the saint, had left a fragment of herself there. A vocal glyph etched into the stone in a spiral pattern that hurt to read. It hummed when we touched it, sang in tones that rearranged our thoughts like scattered data packets aligning in sequence. At its center, the mirror waited. It was not a mirror. Not really. Not glass, not silver. Its surface was smooth but not reflective. It showed no face. It offered no reassurance. Instead, it showed you the parts of yourself that had never been born. The mistakes you almost made. The lies you almost told. The paths you never walked, unfolding beside you like unopened letters. The book had called it the Memory Gate, and it claimed it would show us our true form. Not the one worn by flesh or shaped by prayer, but the self that had been written across all versions of time. To stand before it was to be read, completely. So we prepared the ritual. We didn't know what to chant, so we didn't. Instead, we aligned the pages. Each of us carried a copy now, each book personalized, each one changing subtly with each sunrise. or what passed for sunrise now. The sky hadn't flickered in days, just a flat field of gray noise like the void behind your eyes when you press them too hard. The atrium swallowed sound, always had. No echo, no ambient hum. But as we positioned the mirror at its center, something changed. The room shivered, the air curled inward. It wasn't wind, it was memory, folding in on itself like a dying star. Some began to cry. Others knelt, not in worship, but as if remembering a grief they hadn't lived through yet. I was the first to step forward. I don't know why. The books had not named me a leader. I had no visions, no prophecies. I was not marked. But I was the first to lose myself in the mirror's silence, and so I stepped forward like it mattered. The others cleared the way. No words, just breath. When I stood before it, the surface changed. I saw my face, or what might have been my face. Older, younger, fractured, one eye mechanical, one hand missing. A scar that split my lips in a crooked smile. In the reflection, I wore the robes of a magister. I held a staff. The sky behind me was a field of mouths. The me I saw spoke. I loved her. You forgot her. This is the difference between us. Then the mirror cracked, not from impact, from recognition. The fissures raced like lightning through the surface, revealing images beneath like strata in exposed stone. I saw battlefields I'd never fought on, children calling my name, a library made of screaming bones, a starship burning inside a scream. And at the center of it all, a throne made of books, and seated upon it, me, reading aloud to a crowd of faceless saints. I stepped back. The mirror rippled. Next came Calrin, or a version of him, I couldn't tell. He had no mouth now, only a blank space where his lower jaw should be. The mirror shimmered, and what it showed was him speaking, laughing, a poet surrounded by fireflies. He reached toward the mirror, desperate. It didn't crack for him, it shattered. He was gone. No scream, no smoke, just absence. One by one, the others approached. Some wept at what they saw. Some turned to ash. One split into 3 versions of herself, each walking a different path into the void, whispering different names. I remember one saying, "He was kind to me." I don't know who she meant. I hope it was me. And then came Laura. Not the saint. Not the being of radiant contradiction who had dissolved into light. This was Laura before it all. Plain, strong, wounded. She shouldn't have been there. She had left. And yet she walked forward like she belonged, carrying no book, wearing no mask. The mirror did not resist her. It opened, not metaphorically. It split along its center like a gate, and inside, I saw everything. Planets I had never been to, decisions I never made. I saw myself killing her. I saw myself saving her. I saw her speaking the words I thought were mine. I saw the Emperor not as a man but as a spiral, a wound in time that bled meaning. I saw Tzeentch smiling with 1,000 masks, all of them mine. And then I saw nothing. Black. A silence that was not quiet, but the absence of even the idea of sound. When I woke, the mirror was gone. The atrium was empty. The others were gone. I stood alone, surrounded by books that no longer changed. Pages frozen mid-word, ink dried in loops that never completed. I looked at my hands. They were not mine. Too old, too thin. One covered in script, the other fading. I tried to speak. My voice was not mine either. I had seen too much, and I had no idea who I was anymore. Just one idea remained. The mirror was not a device. It was a judgment, and we had all been found lacking. There is no time here. I've said that before, haven't I? But now, I mean it differently. I don't mean time is broken or that clocks no longer tick or that the sky forgot how to change. I mean it does not apply. I woke up, if that word even still matters, in a chamber shaped like a spiral, though there were no walls. Just suggestion, no light source, and yet I saw. No sound, And yet I heard everything. Voices I had never met calling out my name in a dozen inflections, some angry, some pleading, some broken by awe. They called me prophet. They called me echo. They called me nothing. I looked down and saw that I cast no shadow. I touched my skin and it offered no resistance. I spoke, and the sound came before my lips moved, and somewhere deep in the data wound that had once been my mind, I felt the book. No longer a text, but an organ, beating, rewriting. I cannot tell you if I had become a demon or a ghost. I cannot even tell you if I survived, but something of me persisted, like a memory without a body, drifting in a realm where thoughts had mass and regret left bruises. The architect, Tzeentch, had taken everything, and in its place he left me potential, all of it. Infinite selves flickering in and out of me like static. In one I was a magos, in another a traitor turned saint, in another still a blank slate, no memory, no name, repeating the ritual of my own death endlessly, like penance or joke. But the worst one was the one closest to true. In that version I had never joined the cult. I had never found the book. I had lived my full life in loyal obscurity, just another lathe operator who died choking on forge smoke before his 40th name day. That man was real, he was honest, he was safe. But he had never seen the stars bloom open like wounds. He had never tasted possibility. He had never heard the laughter of a god. That man was gone, and I had become the punchline. Around me now drifted fragments of others, faces half-formed, hands holding memories. I recognized Calrin in one, his mouth stitched shut with golden thread. I saw Laura again, but younger and older and twisted into new shapes. Sometimes she was light, sometimes she was fire, sometimes she simply watched me, her eyes unreadable, her presence neither comfort nor threat. Perhaps she was the saint again. Perhaps I had invented her entirely. I do not know. The atrium no longer existed, not in a way a map could mark. It had folded into a meta-place, a location that sat within metaphor. My thoughts moved me, not my feet, and I was being drawn, somewhere deeper, somewhere final. I reached it without transition, just the sudden realization that I had arrived. A throne, not of gold or bone, but of pages. Books layered atop books, words tattooed into every fiber of the structure, alive and shifting. Upon it sat no figure, but there was presence. I felt it coil around me, curious and playful and hungry. And then it spoke. Not aloud, not in my mind, it spoke through me, using my mouth, using my memory of breath. Do you remember why you came? I did. I think. I whispered, to find the truth. The throne laughed, a gentle, warm sound like betrayal delivered by someone you trusted. There is no truth, it said, only arrangement. And you have been arranged beautifully. I felt my knees weaken. I wanted to kneel, but I had no body anymore, not really. So I simply was, in postures of surrender. I don't want to be rewritten, I said. It replied, you already have been. Many times. This version is simply louder than the others. Then silence. And in that silence, a memory returned. One I didn't expect. A small thing. Laura long ago, before the book, before the saint, before the mirror. She had smiled at me across a cooling vat of refined promethium and said, the Emperor doesn't see us. But something does, I had laughed. But now I understood. I was not seen. I was read. My life, my choices, even my rebellion, scripted. Not in the sense of fate or destiny, but in the sense of narrative. I was a story. One of many, one of millions. A page in the endless tome of a god who fed not on blood, but on transformation. I asked the throne, is there an end? It replied, Nord. There are many. You are already in several of them. But which one is this? This is the one where you remember. Just long enough to regret, and just short enough to be interesting, the laughter again. And then the book opened. I don't remember choosing to enter it. One moment, I was a self. The next, I was a sentence. Then a whisper. Then a possibility filed between older pages. I am writing this from nowhere, or everywhere. Maybe I am only imagining that I ever lived. Maybe you are imagining me now. Either way, it fits. So if you find a page with your name on it, if you hear a voice that knows your regrets before you do, if the stars flicker when you speak certain truths, run or don't. You are always going to choose what you choose. The book is patient. It already has a chapter waiting.